Hey you geeks! If you are here for one villainous scene, know that this video contains a fairly big spoiler for the first two books of Brandon Sanderson's The Stormlight Archive, starting now. I'm going to explain why I find Taravangian freaking terrifying. And yes, I'm only focusing on the first two books of the series, so if you've read further, shush! Originally, I was going to do a book review of Joe Abercrombie's The Blade itself, which I'm reading with John Funk. But Abercrombie's grim-dark world didn't scare me, and I had to wonder why. On top of that, Nando put up the call for videos about villains.
And Rohan will answer.
So here we are. The scene is at the end of the first book, when the reader discovers that the kindly king of Kharbranth, Taravangian, had hired Szeth, the assassin, to kill many major monarchs of Roshar. Then, to put a cherry on top of this horrific sundae, Taravangian takes Szeth into a secret chamber where Taravangian has surgeons killing people to record the prophecies some give with their dying breaths. These are known as death rattles. We do not know why some speak and others do not, but the dying see something. On that bridge between life and the endless ocean of death, they view something. Their words might save us. I am the monster who will save this world. Taravangian is terrifying because he is the living embodiment of the banality of evil. The fandom loves to talk about his utilitarianism, and rightly so. But utilitarianism is not evil per se.
Evil is evil, Stregobor. Lesser, greater, middling.
Let me explain first what I mean by the banality of evil, then examine how Sanderson set up Taravangian and his work as utterly innocuous and banal, before finally revealing that Taravangian is evil. Banality of evil. I take the term banality of evil from esteemed philosopher Hannah Arendt. Born to a Germanic Jewish family, she left Germany in 1933 for obvious reasons. She later wrote about the architects of the Holocaust. Many were neither perverted nor sadistic. They were, and still are, terribly and terrifyingly normal. From the viewpoint of our legal institutions and of our moral standards of judgment, this normalcy was much more terrifying than all the atrocities put together. The evil that scares Arendt is not just the loud dictator with the fancy costume, but the administrators behind him, quietly carrying out his plans. This sort of evil is what scares me, and another great architect of modern fantasy.
3 guesses who?
C.S. Lewis. This is not surprising based on my long-standing theory that Sanderson is a Lewis fanboy. In the Screwtape Letters preface, Lewis wrote, "The greatest evil is not now done in those sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not done even in concentration and labor camps. In those we see its final result. But it is conceived and ordered in clean, carpeted, warmed, and well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks, who do not need to raise their voices." Although Taravangian is notably not clean-shaven, Sanderson loves giving his villains beards. Hindsight, that should have been a dead giveaway, but the beard is easily overlooked when other villains of the genre storm in with swooping capes and face masks. But those seem farcical in comparison.
Engage dramatic entrance.
In contrast to the obvious villain, Sanderson builds Taravangian as a banal old man who seems to be built off of Lewis's definition in particular, slowly building up his inoculations until that one villainous scene makes Taravangian truly terrifying. Innocuous. Before we meet Taravangian, we see his work product, the death rattles, as epigraphs, short snippets before each chapter. It is but 1,000 days, and the Everstorm comes. Collected on the first day of the week of Pala of the month Shash of the year 1171, 31 seconds before death. Subject was a dark-eyed pregnant woman of middle years. The child did not survive. No context, just the death rattle and the notation. Sanderson mainly gives us death rattles as epigraphs in parts 1 and 4 of The Way of Kings. The reader comes to rely on them and tries to figure them out. We also see death rattles in the main work of the book. Maps the Bridgeman gives one before he dies. And all the world was shattered. The rocks trembled with their steps, and the stones reached towards the heavens. We die. We die. I can't help but wonder if that was about the recreants. In my first read, I figured that the epigraphs were coming from some scholar traveling from deathbed to deathbed, recording what he or she heard. I wasn't wrong, just not quite right. Relying on this misconception, I felt no guilt when I pieced together that they were predictions for the future, which could reveal the end of the very book I was reading. The chapter 59 epigraph tells us, "Above the final void I hang, friends behind, friends before. The feast I must drink clings to their faces, and the words I must speak spark in my mind. The old oaths will be spoken anew." This hinted at Kaladin, the main character, drawing Stormlight from Parshendi beard gems. And then in chapter 67, Kaladin draws Stormlight from Parshendi beard gems. As a reader, I felt so satisfied I had used epigraphs to predict the future. Sure, the Vorans had a problem with that, but they have silly customs, like hiding a woman's left hand. It was innocuous.
Like, what was I meant to do?
Meanwhile, we meet Taravangian, the kindly old king of Kharbranth, who uses his city's wealth of knowledge to facilitate its world-renowned healthcare. We're told about this beneficent financial arrangement as early as chapter 7, but the message is reinforced by Taravangian in chapter 48. He humbly states that his hospitals are my greatest achievement, light eyes and dark eyes alike. Nobody turned away, not beggar, not whore, not sailor from afar. It's all paid for by the Palaneum, you know. Free healthcare for anyone who needs it? That's wonderful! In Kaladin's flashbacks, his moral compass, his father, provides free healthcare for his village and reveres the surgeons of Kharbranth, Taravangian city. Taravangian seems to rule as morally as a king can. Then Taravangian himself seems kindly and a little dense. He has a granddaughter who he dotes on. He even tries to debate theology with Yasna Kholin.
It's hard to listen to you with a straight face.
Such a blunder that even Shallan pities him. Your conversation with the king was not entirely fair because of his limited capacity. He did quite remarkably, but didn't make the arguments that someone more versed in Voran theology might have. As a reader, I pitied the old man, loved his work, and relied on it to make predictions about the future of Roshar. Sanderson set me up beautifully. Then he flipped the tables. The scene. We get this scene from Szeth Sunsun Villano's perspective. Szeth is infamously known as the assassin in white. Though the world knows him as a fierce killer, the reader knows he takes no delight in killing people. He views himself as an utter slave to his master's will. He opened the book by killing King Gavilar, then got handed off from master to master. He even spent time in a Dickensian villain's lair, complete with dramatic costuming. Szeth Sunsun Villano, truthless of Shinovar, crouched on a high stone ledge at the side of the gambling den. He wore a form-fitting black costume beneath the cloak. the lower part of his face covered by a cloth mask. Both were of Makek's design. It was a terrible outfit for an assassin, but Makek demanded drama. There is no doubt Szeth has seen and perpetrated more than his share of terrors. Yet Taravangian's work shocks him. Szeth couldn't speak. He couldn't voice his horror and revulsion. In front of him, one of the victims, a man in his younger years, expired. Two of those remaining were children. Szeth stepped forward. He had to stop this. This makes Taravangian's work even more shocking to the reader.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
On top of the shock, Sanderson made me, at least, a participant in Taravangian's evil scheme. I used the rattles to predict the future of Roshar, though I could do nothing about it. Taravangian says he can use the predictions to protect Roshar. Such a lofty goal for him justifies killing the innocent, because Taravangian views himself as a utilitarian. His ends always justify his means. We kill them, slowly and easily. Sometimes we need more bodies than the terminally sick can provide, and so we must bring the forgotten and the lowly, those who will not be missed. Taravangian's utilitarianism stands in stark contrast to the series' theme that the means must be honorable to justify the ends. But utilitarianism isn't evil per se. Even Peter Singer, with whom I disagree on practically every point, acknowledged some need for morality in utilitarianism. And there are those who find Taravangian's rationalization very compelling. I call it his rationalization, not his reasoning, because Taravangian's utilitarian cruelty is often without an end to justify his means.
To what point and purpose, young missy?
This is where we get into Book 2 spoilers. In one of his brighter moments, Taravangian admitted that the death rattles were not the most dependable means of information. Moalak's touch seeps into a soul as it breaks apart from the body, creating manifestations powered by the spark of death itself. But no, this is a distraction, a conundrum that may not be worth your time. As the bodies piled up, I had to wonder, how many people did Taravangian kill to get that one death rattle which predicted Kaladin leaping the chasm? While that information was useful to me, was it useful to him? Maybe some of Taravangian's cronies used it to identify Kaladin when he was trying to keep his surge binding a secret. Yet, what did they achieve with that information?
Can't remember diddly.
I know.
Can't remember squat.
That's right.
Diddly squat.
Diddly squat.
They certainly did not make use of the rattle, which predicted that Kaladin would defend Elhokar. From the start, Taravangian's team knew that information collected from the death rattles was unlikely to achieve anything. From what we've seen, they barely used the information, and what they did use achieved very little. Yet they killed countless people to obtain this information just in case. Taravangian can tell himself that this is utilitarian, but I don't think so. The ends justifying the means only works when the ends are achieved. Dressing it up as utilitarian makes it sound more or less morally acceptable. Taravangian's rationalization lacks a clear logic, and that is what makes him evil. Evil comes from a failure to think. It defies thought, for as soon as thought tries to engage itself with evil and examine the premises and principles from which it originates, it is frustrated because it finds nothing there. That is the banality of evil. That is how this scene makes Taravangian the most terrifying villain I've ever met. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.